Hi, Sarah Childress back with you. Okay, I will admit I did almost vomit when I saw the Spirited trailer. I mean, it was just too sickly sweet and cloyingly silly, and I have to admit I'm not really a musical fan. But I decided to give it a try because 'tis the season, and boy, am I ever glad I did. And in part, it's because of the performances, which were not a surprise. I mean, Ryan Reynolds is basically playing Ryan Reynolds, and ditto for Will Ferrell. Though I have to admit, I did find Will Ferrell to be less feral. I mean, less committed to the beautiful extremes that I usually love to see him go to. But what I was surprised about was how fun it was to watch Ryan Reynolds' character Clint Briggs really resist the flow of A Christmas Story, and specifically of A Christmas Carol, because he literally interrupts the narrative. He questions, he refuses, he confronts, sometimes he even runs away. And he also spends a great deal of time trying to corrupt the characters and also to corrupt the narrative. I mean, in fact, he calls the whole Christmas Carol system into question by bringing up a central conflict at its heart. And that's really embodied in the central question of the original work, which is, are people essentially good or bad? I mean, the Christmas Carol system is predicated on the belief that people are essentially good. You just have to bring that goodness out. Because the goodness has been lost and it has to be found again. It has to be resurrected in a sense. But what's so clever about the Christmas Carol system that's presented in this film, besides this very wonderfully meta turn in which the Christmas Carol action or production, I guess I should say, is a grand production, kind of on the scale of this $75 million grand production. Therefore, it's like all kinds of meta here. But in addition to that, it also specifically avoids any attempt to redeem people that have been classified as unredeemable. And you can go with the people are essentially good argument when you avoid any countervailing evidence, anything that would prove contrary to that kind of maxim, to the truth of that particular statement. But our hero, played by Will Ferrell, not only wants to, he needs to show that people are essentially good, and that people who have been classified or seen as unredeemable, that they ultimately are redeemable. And in this way, he really does seek to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that the Christmas Carol system, the Christmas Carol philosophy is true, that it's accurate and it's correct, because the stakes for him are quite high on this. But this proof also involves a corollary, which I guess involves the question of, can people really change? So there's, are people good or bad? But then there's also a part of that, like, can people really change? That's another thing that the Christmas Carol system kind of hinges on. And not only does the Christmas Carol system hinge on, can people really change? Classical Hollywood narrative also hinges on that, because characters have to change in order for a story arc to be completed. I mean, that's what classical Hollywood narrative is based on. So this kind of question is another meta exploration, really one that involves storytelling itself. And that's why I think, all of these questions and needs, they felt way more significant to me than the business taken up in most other contemporary Christmas films, because it's really taking up the question of the Christmas Carol, like the basic Christmas story, and then also storytelling itself into its kind of meta explorations. And they also seem to question rather, the basic premise that a good person in a bad situation, which is really where we see a lot of the narratives, for example, in some of the Christmas movies that I was talking about in my other video, a good person in a bad situation, usually the result of some trauma, like a mother dying. But usually the good person in a bad situation will find true love, and that can be true love in the romantic sense, or also in a sort of spiritual or agape sense. And that finding that love will open them up to becoming a good person. And even if they're not actually, authentically, really a good person, at least they seem to be a good person because they're now a person and what has been socially deemed to be a good situation. So, for example, married with children. So it's not so much requiring change in the person itself as much as change in that person's situation. So that's actually an interesting thing to keep in mind as you're watching films, and specifically watching these kind of holiday films or romantic films. Does the narrative change involve the person, him or herself, or does it involve a change in the person's situation? But I'm making it sound way more kind of practical and classroom than it actually is. It's really fun. Actually, I also found it really affecting. Yes, there were some tears that I shed at the end, and that's why I want to recommend it. It's a really fun time. The songs are great and super fun, and it's kind of like a fun way to brighten up the holiday season. Anyway, I hope you enjoy it, and happy holidays.